towards each other as a spouse. Understand the fact that your spouse is human. We always say yes. We want to be from the people of the Prophet, from the Quran, but my husband is not the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I am not Khadija radiallahu anha. So I bring my background to the marriage, and my husband brings his own background to the marriage. However, there's no marriage without conflict. There's going to be conflict. But once we understand why this person is making this decision, we can step back and say, maybe I need to think through it. Maybe there's a reason why he's doing that. Maybe we need to talk about it more. And that kind of makes it easy for us to make decisions as we grow. So my timeline is, marriage is about growth. And that growth does not stop until we get to Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah, is the goal. So if we come from the place of growth, we know we have to keep learning, we have to keep refining, we have to keep trying to understand, and it doesn't stop. I mean, Allah make it easy for all of us.
Jazakallah khair. That's wonderful. Our lecturers are so time conscious. Thank you so much. Inshallah, next to Dr. Laima.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And I want to express my profound gratitude for the society for inviting me to be here. It's been truly amazing to be here. And my opening statement is actually my experience being here since yesterday. So that's going to be my opening statement. And that's with when I rented the car in the airport. And of course, I didn't know anywhere to go, right? So I put in the address that they gave me for the very nice hotel that you guys put me. That's a wonderful hotel, my kind of hotel. I love it. So, but the fact is I don't know the way, and it showed multiple pathways, right? And then in this one, you say this one is 2 minutes slower, this one is 5 minutes faster, this one is, and then it selected one. Now, was I arguing with the direction? No. I was just following. In fact, when it got to one point over there, he told me to make a sharp right. By the time I realized the sharp right, I already passed it. And it routed me through another route. And eventually I made it to the hotel. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. But that's my own similitude of what happens with our marriages too. Like our sister has mentioned here, the goal is Jannatul Firdaus. But how do we get there? That's what the process of the marriage and the experiences we all bring in, that's where they come in. And there's no one single pathway there. And occasionally, there may be an accident in the way. And then you have a detour. Or you even miss the exit like I did. And then it rerouted you to another one. But we have to get away from thinking there's a one perfect solution for every situation. That's the first thing we have to get away from. There's no marriage that is going to be exactly a copy, similar to another marriage. Even from the same family, even from when you have genetic makeup, you are twins, whatever. Every experience is going to be different. So that's my first opening statement. And my second statement is actually also my experience. And that was with my neighbor. I used to have a neighbor who was a landscape artist. Believe me, there's no time. You know the statement, the grass is greener on the other side? That's a big lie with me and my neighbor. When I cut my grass, I run the lawnmower over it. I leave the grass on it. Weeds even overrun my lawn. Okay, so it doesn't look that green. My neighbor, if you stand in his lawn looks greener. When you stand in my lawn, his lawn still looks greener. Because he will take absolute care of his lawn. I told you it's a lawn, so that's my excuse. I said, well, he's just a landscape artist, so he can do it perfectly. So I give myself all those excuses, right? Until we decided, okay, let's kill some of this weed. Let's mow our lawns and pack the grass also. Let's do a little bit. And then my lawn also started looking a little green, but not as green as it is. Forget that. That's not going to happen. So when people tell you the lawn looks greener on the other side, it's a lie. I have that practical experience to show, no, the lawn looks greener where you take care of it. So whether it is yours, it will look green to you. If you look at another lawn that is well taken care of, it's going to look green. So the day I stood in my lawn, I have pictures to show it. Honestly, in my previous phone, I have all these pictures because I stood in there and then I was reflecting about that thing. I said, these people are lying to us. Who tells us that the lawn is greener on the other side? My lawn doesn't look green. It never looked green, except the day they gave us the house. After that, it never looked green compared to my neighbor. So the issue is the lawn will look greener where what? Where you take care of it. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakumullah khairan. That was a wonderful, excellent opening statement and an example that is very relatable to our everyday life. So I hope all of us here we got it from what he just said, right? As you lay your bed, so you find. So all right. With that being said, maybe as our panelists are opening up, maybe there's a burning question before we go down to our polled question that we already have from the community. We are going to allow one question from the women's side and one from the men's side before we move on. In the absence of any question, we go ahead with the question that we already have. There's any? Okay, inshallah, I'll move on to first question from our polled question. So these are questions that comes in 3 different types, and I'm going to collapse it together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay. 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 Very important logistic process here. Your question can be anonymous. You don't have to ask it. We will have people going around with papers and pen to write your question down as you like. And we will not announce where the question comes from. We want everybody to free open up about whatever issue that may be. We are in a safe place for us to discuss. We have experienced mothers here, we have experienced fathers here, as well as our youth that are looking up to us, that have probably been looking at us role model for marriage. They want to know. So please open up. Your question can be anonymous as much as you want. Thank you for that. So the first question that I'm going to collapse together. First one says, why do we marry in the first place? And what are the benefits of marriages? In it, are there any risks that couples need to be aware of that may impact their relationships? What are those pressures that may impact modern Muslim families living in the Western world? It's open. It's open, whoever wants to take on the question.
Okay. Okay, what are some pressures impacting modern Muslim families?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's a packed question. So pressures impacting modern Muslim families. I think it depends on what stage you are in marriage. We understand that Allah has made marriage one of those things for us as Muslims to help complete our deen. We know that when we have a spouse, our spouse can also be that guide to be able to get us to the ultimate goal of getting to Jannah to Firdaus. But it's a tough journey to get. So in modern families like today, there's a lot of challenges that we're going through. One of the things I see that is very different from even when I got married is the fact that we're now more exposed to a lot of things happening to other people. So in our experiences when we were little, the experience we had were the experiences of the people that we knew around us, and maybe, the neighbors and friends that were close to us. But now experiences are global. So you can be in your room, but you can see what's going on in Mexico or Nigeria or whatever. And those things that we see and we hear about can also impact how we feel in our daily lives, in how we react to things and how we look at things. So for example, if I was having an issue with my spouse did something to me, I'm upset, and I open my Instagram, for instance, and I see my friend is in Cancun with her husband, they're throwing flowers, and I'm thinking to myself, why is my husband not like this? So there is a lot of peer pressure that we have out there. There's also a lot of fitna that we have to deal with when it comes to marriage. So the fitna of everything else, wealth and exposure and everything else that's going out there. So there's a lot of all that fitna. And also when it comes to the support system we used to have, especially if you're not close to where your family is, it's very different. We don't have the support of the whole family being part of the marriage. Our modern lives, we want to be a little bit isolated, and isolation can be good and also has a lot of negative impacts in our lives. So when it comes to isolation, you're not able to tell people, okay, this is what I'm going through. And sometimes by the time people know, it's already gone so bad that you can't even correct whatever the issues are. So we're not able to relatively tell people, this is what I'm going on, what are the solutions, what have you gone through, and stuff like that. So those are the things that I see.
Okay, in addition to what my sister just mentioned, some other pressures that impact modern Muslim families, most important is the economic, financial stability. Also, the fitness that we're going through right now, is really impacting families. Some other pressures that are impacting families are the fact that the women in this part of the world, they do not have support system. So everything is usually on the wife. She does the cleaning, she does the cooking, So in addition to that, also, there is a gross lack of knowledge of the rights of husbands and wives, between each other. And then things get muddled up here and there. So we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assist us. And some of the reasons why people marry, some people marry because their friends are marrying. I've reached that age, I also want to marry. Some people marry because they want good children. Some people marry because they can't stay by themselves. They need the support, either emotional or, courage-wise or whatever. And then some people, they marry because, it's sunnah, I have to do it. And some people marry because they follow the advice of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that when you reach such an age, you should marry. If you feel like you have desires and you can afford to marry, then marry, Some people marry because they tell them it's half of my deen, I have to do it. And some people, they marry because they understand that it's a way to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ultimately, we should, as Muslims, we are Muslims. That cannot depart from us, bi'iznillah. So our marriage, for whatever reason we marry, we should always remember that most important is that we will return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our return, we pray that Allah accept us in the best of our deeds. And when you marry, you are able to garner more deeds and you look more honorable in the sight of Allah, So alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, we promise to allow one question each from either side. And I would really want to throw this question to Dr. Laima. Islam makes us, and this is a question from one of the audience. Islam makes us understand that a woman's financial contribution to home is sadaqah, What do you do if your income is just as much as your spouse and it makes you feel guilty for not splitting the bills? For not splitting the bills.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So that's a good one. So it could either come from the husband who feels, wow, she's making so much money, why am I paying all the bills? Or it could come from a sister who wants to be like the wife of Abdullah ibn Masud and wants to say, oh, my husband is a wonderful guy, but he's not as rich as I want him to be. Can I contribute money to the household? So that's a great question, and I love the way it is framed. So that's why I'm taking the route of answering it this way. Yeah, knowing and understanding that it is sadaqah, as the writer puts it, it's good because then the husband should not come around and start making any demands on that money. If he understands that this money or this contribution from my wife is sadaqah, he should take it as such, which means if it is withdrawn, life moves on. So this is an aspect of, and in case you guys have not noticed, I'm a guy. And I know I'm talking and I'm facing the ladies. So understand that part. Every man, the joy of being a man is to be able to provide. So a lot of time when your husband is grumpy and cranky, when it comes to money issues, he's just not trying to tell you that he's broke. So if you are understanding that way and you want to help, that's great. But the advice we will always give ourselves as men, do not plan your life based on your wife's income. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Jazakallah khairan.
Hope that response is a bit satisfactory. If you need to expand on it, you can write it forward. I'm going to take the next question from the audience before we go back to our post question. And this question is centered around maybe in-laws, family, extended member. The writer says, what does Islam say about extended house guests, be it family or not family? Especially if this is a sour topic that is constantly if this topic is always constantly causing issues in their marriage. Considering our cultures expect a woman to have no say in the matter. And I want to throw something into this right quick. In my neighborhood, there's a Turkish family that lives there. So we were talking and we start pointing who is a Nigerian family on the street. And the Turkish guy said, okay, that one's a Nigerian family because I know the Nigerian always have guests over living in their houses. I'm like, oh my God, really? So this is a common issue that people that know us already know about. When does a guest overstay their limit? One, is it have to be only one of the couple's decision that the guest stay, be it family or non-family, or both have to be in agreement that the guest can stay? And when do they actually overstay their limit?
Assalamu alaikum. So this is relevant to me because I have guests at home. Plenty of guests. But for me and for my spouse, it's all about communication and expectation. So before we started having guests, we actually talk about it. And I think for you to make any decision that might potentially affect your spouse in any way, you have to actually sit down and communicate and discuss and have each party bring their perspective and opinions to the discussion, because that makes it easy. And when the expectation is set, there's no surprises and everybody's on the same page. And even if there are surprises, there has to be room for changes and say, you know what, although I said the guest can stay for a month, but as these things are going, I think we need to switch. This cannot work for us anymore. So that open communication is very important. I talked about background. if you understand your spouse background, like I said, it's very important even going
Dr.
into the
Abdulaziz, can
marriage.
I please interrupt you there? That open communication, is it going to be before the guests arrive or after the guests arrive, the first day, second day, third day, they are not leaving, then we communicate, this is the agenda. So how does it go?
No, even before anybody comes, you have to be able to say, yes, it's okay for me to have whoever guest is in the house. Both of you have to agree, and to also agree and know the expectation of how much time they're spending and if it's convenient for us. The truth is, sometimes you might say, okay, I'm okay, because you think it's going to work out. But these guests come and you're like, this is not going to work. And that's why the communication comes in. You have to have room to say, you know what, this is it, but unfortunately, it's not working for us. We need to make changes. So you have to be able to have room for things to change when it's not working out. So communication is the key. But like I said, having that background information about your spouse is also very important so that there won't be conflict when things like this happen. Because in our cultures, we're expected to have guests. Alhamdulillah, for me personally, it's been a honor for me. And why I tell you what communication and background is very important is I grew up in a house where we always had people around. In the summer, we had 15 guests in my house every single time. My husband's house is different. It's different. So having that difference can be an issue when you don't have that communication in the beginning and say, okay, in my house, my grandma has 7 husbands. So I have cousins from different parts of it. And my maternal grandma had 6 husbands and we had different. So my family is big. And for him to understand that, then he can understand why I have 3 cousins and I don't even understand how they became cousins.
Dr.
And it just makes sense. And then your husband, if your husband is somebody that's not used to having guests around, you have to be able to have that communication and say, if somebody is coming, is 3 days the limit, then 3 days is going to be the limit.
Okay.
Because you have to be able to understand each other to be able to keep growing when it comes to that. And guests in your house is a personal space. It is your place of community and place of sanctuary, especially for we women. So for some men too, it's very personal. So you have to be able to communicate for the expectation.
Dr. Dabiri, if you can please direct us to the last injunction or sooner about when it's no longer working. They both agreed before the guests arrive, but it's no longer working. How do we go about it? In the line of, yeah, it is our culture to bring people, to welcome people into our home, but it's no longer working. So how do we support it with sooner or from doctrine from myself? It's no longer about our culture anymore. And remember, we are living in the Western world that things here might not be the same as the guests expected. Or maybe they are just arriving from Nigeria with different psychological baggages in their head. So please direct us how the couple can go about it.
See, everybody is laughing or smiling because you suddenly changed the question. MashaAllah. All right, alhamdulillah. Okay, yeah, so unfortunately, this topic, this situation has led to many families becoming, broken down, disintegrated or whatever, subhanAllah. And like, this is something that we are all living with, that we see in the community. So it's very important. As always, I would always say that the first thing is to know, what does Islam say? And just like one of the panelists have mentioned, Dr. Laimo specifically, one clothes cannot fit everybody, So Islam does not give you like a cut-tailored way. It gives you principles of, how to navigate these things. And then you would now look at it and do it according to how, comfortable it is for the family. So first of all, there has to be principles for each family. I know a family, one of their principles, number 1, we cannot have a non-Muslim in our house. So the husband or the wife should not even bring it up. And they know the reason why they don't want that, because of the children. because they feel like when they have non-Muslims at home, it's like they are teaching the kids, silently teaching them, another religion, because the person will probably be active in their own religion. So there has to be principles between the spouses. And another thing that the Sunnah make us to realize is that a woman is entitled to, when she marries her husband, she's entitled to 3 things. He, as much as possible, to the best of his ability, he should provide her a living space. He should provide her with her own beast. Might be riding animal, it might be a car, it might be, something to move around. And he should provide her with the basic necessities that she needs to sleep, to eat, to, clothing, all that she, according to his means. And if Allah has provided for him, if Allah has given him much, risk, then he needs to provide for her according to the standard of her family, if she's from a very rich family. Because we need to mention this, because there's possibility that there are 2 wives, 3 wives, So some people say that, no, he give them the same thing. He has to provide for them according to their standard, how they are, what is appreciable in the sight of their people, to say that he is taking care of them. Not that he would make one to be less than the other, but he would do it with a lot of wisdom. So also the Sunnah make us to realize specifically certain things. There's some kind of people that shouldn't be in your home because of your wife, your children, your girls, even sometimes your boys, And one good example is where in the Sunnah, we have the hadith where the Rasul said, the husband's brother is the shaitan. Not that he is shaitan, but that is a doorway, So there are certain kind of people that shouldn't be in the home. It aches you when you hear that, the husband's brother is coming. First, you'll be thinking, where's my hijab? What do I do? Do I have to use my hijab every day? She's not free for her anymore. And then this is not right. So bi-iznillah, to the best of a person's ability, when you know Islam makes everything easy, So these are some of the principles that need to be laid down. And then when it's
no longer working.
Okay, ma?
When it's no longer working.
I'm coming to that. And then ultimately, the husband has this, the husband has he's the one in charge. He's responsible for the family. Allah has charged him with that responsibility. So he can tell the wife direct, I don't want this person in my house. And the funny thing is that it is difficult for women to listen to this. You say, but she's my mother, but I want her to stay with me. But the truth is that the husband can say, I don't want your mom to be in this house with us. Not because his mom is not good, but because probably he has seen that, okay, when she's here, it makes my wife change her behavior. She's no longer obedient to me, because truly it's happening, and this is like a call for us parents to look at ourselves and do right. Don't go to your children's house and try to, force a way in between them, things like this. So when we understand that Allah and Rasulullah are making these laws for life to be easy, everything will become easy. When we bring our parents understand Islam, everything is easy. They just, let them do their thing. Their generation is different, So everything becomes easy, alhamdulillah. But when a guest comes and it seems as if they've overstayed their welcome, irrespective of the situation, the first thing is to be patient. Because really, when we say that people are going to enter Jannah based on their marriages, it is patience. The word is because of the patience they have inside the marriage. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned it in the verse of the Quran, Allah talked about the fact that they would enter Jannah. Jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anhar. And Allah went on to say, وَمَنْ صَلَحَ مِنْ آبَائِكُمْ وَأَزْوَاجِكُمْ وَذُرِّيَّاتِكُمْ. Their wives, their children, their fathers, their forefathers, they will enter. وَمَلَائِكَةُ يَدْخُلُونَ كُلُّ أَبْوَابٍ. The malaika, they will come from different doors, greeting them. They will say, Salamun alaykum bima sabartum. For that which you have been patient. So no matter what, there need to be the ingredients of patience in this matter. And then a husband that really wants to be kind to his wife, the way the Rasul ﷺ has ordered them to be kind to us. You see the us, right? So they will take the way in between, trying not to offend the visitor as much as trying to make sure that their wives are comfortable. Because really, when a husband tries his best to make the wife comfortable, the children come out successful. When he tries his best to make the wife comfortable, he himself will be successful because she'll wake up at night and she doesn't want anything to happen to her husband. This is natural. And at the same time, when he offends her, she will call on Allah. And the verses are in the Quran because she's allowed to do that. So we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us the necessary patience at every stance in our lives.
Alhamdulillah. You see that we give this question a lot of times because this is something that has been a lot of causing issues in our families, especially we that we live in diaspora. I also think a point that I would also like to add is that I think that it's important for us to let our visitor talk about the expectation of how many days we want them to stay. It's important that we discuss that with our visitor, even if the person is coming to live in the United States forever, and okay, I'm expecting you to stay with me for a month before you go ahead and rent your own apartment. It's important to have this talk. It's important. So inshallah, I'll go to the next advice. Dr. Laima wants to.
Assalamu alaikum. If you will indulge me, I want to add something to that question. A lot of issues when it comes to overstaying typically doesn't happen with fathers. So you have to look at the other side of that story. Yeah, it's very important. I mean, that's why you guys have me on the panel, right? Yeah, because there is an entity that I describe as the mobile grandma syndrome. That she will leave her own husband, who is then having frozen food in the freezer for 6 months. And she's going to Chicago to raise that child, going to New York to raise that child, flying back to Houston to raise that child. And her husband is in Nigeria. And he has no second wife. And he's just staying. And then the neighbors are the ones taking care of him. And then if he decides that he needs somebody else to help him out also, in all the other departments, so it's really important as you address the person that is staying to also understand that the rights of the person left behind is being violated.
We'll only allow one question from the audience because we already overflowed this question. Only one question from the audience on this question. For now. Please go ahead, sister.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
Yes, my question is polygyny. Like I have a friend, like the husband just maybe got married to another wife. So, but the problem is, ever since she has got married to this woman, like the other woman, I know most of this thing is not happening here. So we don't know the effects and we don't know how painful it is. So this lady is in Nigeria, right? So the husband married another woman in Ibadan. He will leave home for 5 days, stay with the new wife, And on each time he comes home, he will be on phone with the wife that he just left. So this woman is being so traumatized. Like the complaint the husband is giving is, oh, now someone that you neglected, you don't give attention to, even when you come home, that is the information I got from her, and I trust my friend. I know she can't tell me lie. So whenever he comes home, he will not give the wife attention. The wife will be, immediately he finish eating, he will be on the phone with the new wife he just got married to. So the woman is like, she's been traumatized. She don't know what to do. I've given her the advice that I can. Keep praying. Emma Shadura, Emma Shega. But the husband is not changing.
Jazakallah
So
khairan.
is what advice can you give to this woman?
Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I see that now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, I don't know what they are talking about. I'm just getting the speaker and we laugh with you. But what I want to let us know is that I know we don't like when the men is around, but today they are around. We invited them. So they are most welcome. But please, let's leave their bathroom for them. We don't own the house today. And unfortunately for us, their bathroom is under reconstruction. So please, this male bathroom, let's leave it alone. Don't go there. Our female bathroom is working inside the masjid and also over here. Please let them give them confidence. Jazakallah khairan.
Okay, I see that people are very passionate about this topic that we have, even though the question that my dear sister asked is different from what we're talking about right now. So what we're going to do is, because of time, we're going to allow one more question from the women's side and two on this side, and then they will answer it together because we have a lot of questions from the house that really want to stay on track. Assalamu alaikum.
If your question is about polygamy, we can hold it on for a while. We are
Assalamu alaikum. We're going to deal with
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. What she meant is that we're going to jumble questions together because there are some related questions. Questions came in and we have some that are related together. So we will put them together so that our panelists will talk about it together. If not, we'll just be everywhere. Please
Assalamu alaikum. So, alhamdulillah, I think we all can agree that the institution of marriage is in crisis, based on, the discussion that we've been having so far. Because, if we look at the how things are going right now, unfortunately, the rate of divorce is very high, even in the Muslim community. So now, and I hope that we have more of this discussion. I hope it's not just like a, one-time thing, just because, this discussion is actually needed. Because when we talk about institution of marriage, it doesn't only affect the man and the woman, it affects the kids that actually, in this marriage as well. So whether we want, however we want to slice or dice it. So now, so I guess my question is, what can or how can things be done to be able to engage men in this kind of discussion, looking at how Nigeria, I mean, no offense, really, how our Nigerian men are raised, in terms of, the household that they were raised in, where they look at, I think one of the panel, maybe Dr. Aziz, talk about like, how the household where they are raised, they look at, people, around them growing up. And oftentimes, most of these men, again, I'm not dissing anyone, I'm just, being, really straightforward here. Most of our men, they don't really know how to express themselves, and, there's certain things ingrained in their minds that they just work, provide for their family or their women, and, that's it. And we women, we struggle with them, bond them with their, children, the boys, so, and I think that, more needs to be done in terms of engaging them, in terms of talking more about this. I know therapy is something that we still struggle with in our community, like, them seeking, therapy or seeking therapy, marriage counseling, so I just want to hear from the panel regarding this. Assalamu alaikum.
Next question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. So this question is a little bit practical. So you have a parent, a mother who is not with your father, either by virtue of them divorced or the father is dead, and she want to stay with you, and your husband, your wife, or your spouse says, no, she can't. You as the child, now you have a responsibility to take care of your parent. Now the parent needs you to take care of them, right? But your spouse is saying, no, I can't have him or her in your house. If you say no to your parent, you are already violating your responsibility to that parent. If you say no to your wife, you are already violating our rights and responsibility. How do you strike a balance?
Assalamu alaikum.
You have a question? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa
In
barakatuh.
addition to the broader question, we consider that the husband, you don't have means to rent a house for the girls, either the parent or the brother or sister. So we consider that you don't have the, is he going to send them out or what he going to do? And my other question is to the Dr. Laimo about the responsibility of the wife in the house. So the contribution of the wife to the husband is considered as sadaqah. If the wife is working 8 hours, husband is working 8 hours, one way or the other, the responsibility of the wife will be left behind in the house. So how do you balance that?
That should be our last question, but out of respect for our out of state, out of city visitor, I will take one from our mother from Dallas. One last question for now.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, Jama Muslimin.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. 1 minute, ma.
My comment is back to the money issue in the family. And we women, we need to realize we're here as a peer to our husband. When we come into this country, we came in with a 1 package or 2 package. We are here, we bond together with our husband. We are here, we're making it, but at the same time, we realize our husband don't need to tell us that he needs money, he needs this, he needs that. We open our eyes, what our husband have to do to keep the household going. and you see that there is a lag behind when he said, oh, we have a budget of $5,000 to do this. Oh, but right now I think we have 3,000. You women should dig into your pocket without asking your husband. Say, Alhamdulillah, we're gonna get that done. Just give me a couple of my paycheck, we will do it.
Jazakallah.
We keep on going with that. Your husband will know that you are there for them on the, up and downs, and he will be able to keep up the household going. But when we get to the point of say, oh, it's my money.
So this is
it's
not a
your
question.
money, that is not a question.
Yes.
It's a comment on
Okay.
based on money.
All right.
That we're
Jazakallah
talking
khairan.
about,
Eshoma.
may Allah help us.
Amen,
We women
amen.
were the one divorcing our husband. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. In order for us to stay on track, please.
Masjidul.
Asitulillah. Salli ala
12:30.
Muhammad. Allahumma ya Rabbi.
Sallallahu Muhammad.
Wa zaidi sadati.
Nabiyyi Muhammad.
Please,
It is
let's
12:30. 12:30, meaning that Salatul Zuhr is going to cut off. We have a lot to go through. Please,
Yes.
let us collaborate together so that we can get as much as
Yeah,
possible done here.
For proper coordination, we only want questions. We have our panelists to answer the questions for us. Jazakallah khairan, ma.
Oh, okay, the divorce. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So they wanted me to answer the question about the brother that asked about his mom that is a widow and is living with them. For the brother, I pray Allah continues to bless him and for Allah to provide for him. Like I said, I'm not a scholar, but if there is a conflict between the wife and your mother's home is not your wife's home. Your marriage, your house belongs to you and your wife and your kids. So may Allah bless you. Rent an apartment close to home by the side of your house for your mom. Get her all the help she needs. May Allah continue to bless you and visit her every day. But she doesn't have to be in the same house as your wife if there is conflict, because then it's going to be between you, your wife, and your mom, and it can also potentially break your marriage.
Dr. Laimo, please, let's hear from.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For those of you who did not hear the side comment from my sister to my right, is that grandma sodo, which is great because it's true. Now, when it comes to the issue of addressing the mother or even the father, because sometimes the fathers, we are always thinking the father is going to die before the mother. I don't know where you guys get all that information. Even though practically speaking it's true, okay? The way I like to flip that is that the men die quickly because the women kill them. Oh, okay, good. So don't answer the question that way. And the reason is this, though. Let's do it this way. At any time in the world, there are typically more widows than widowers. So it's a practical thing. So the question is not out of place. However, the solution, only Allah can give us the solution. Because the man is going to be saying to himself, his paradise lies at his feet of his mom. And at the same time, he has his responsibility to his wife. Now, I don't know the answer to the question. So I have no problem telling you I don't know. But what I want to happen is for them to actually sit down and see if they can mitigate the problem. Because you see, mitigating the problem will go a long way. Better than just saying, let's just solve it by getting another apartment for your mom and all that. If the mommy said, well, that's fine, I'm just leaving. And the mother remains unhappy with the son. and the son is constantly thinking about that, do you think he's going to be happy with the wife? It's not going to happen. So that's why the answer is not that straightforward. For me, at this point, all I can say is, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the household and help them resolve the differences. Even if the mother is still going to live somewhere else, even if she's still going to go back home somewhere, whatever is it, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide and protect them. Because anyone away from me a long time ago, if you know too much of your rights, you'll be by yourself. That if you know your rights, you are so sure of your right, and you want to always get your right, you'll be by yourself, and that will be your right. So if we understand that part, then we will know that some of these questions, like I said, they don't have any direct solution. It's like that navigation system. There are many parts. One may be 2 minutes slower, one may be 5 minutes slower, one may be faster, but in the end, the destination is what we should focus on. So, Emma Bino, I don't know the answer to the question.
Dr. Dabiri.
Okay. Okay. Bismillah. So I wanted to bring a different dimension to the answer of that question, which is that we shouldn't throw away the fact that having grandparents in particular living with us has its own advantages. And one of the advantages is that your children get to see how you are taking care of your parents, and they will have it ingrained in them that they need to do similar to you. And you don't even know the future, you know? Yeah, so that's one thing we need to note right there. Another important thing that, Assalamu alaikum. All right. Okay, another important point in this matter is that we follow the laws and principles of Islam, right? The husband needs to know categorically that his wife was not married to take care of his parents. This is the truth, and we need to stand by it. And he also needs to understand that by logic, when you pamper your wife, she will want everything you want. So it's very easy. When you marry this wife, take very good care of her. If she knows that something is going to make my husband unhappy, she will not want it to happen. In fact, she will put her money down. Mama sebe every week, you know, because she wants her husband's behavior with her to continue. And then when it is in the case of the wife's parents, similarly, there are some husbands who do not want parents in the house because they feel like it makes the house not private enough for them. The wife needs to realize the kind of husband that she has at that point. She needs to understand that my husband is like this. He likes a lot of privacy. So it doesn't make sense that you have someone in the house for a long time and that makes your husband to keep staying in the room. He can't come out because this is his own nature. So these are some of the things I wanted us to bring our attention to.
Jazakallah khairan. Inshallah, we'll be going to our question here.
Okay. Dr. Bidmore said you have not answered that question.
No. We're still going to get to it.
Okay. So, Dr.
Inshallah. So, how do you manage? Okay. What causes love to diminish in marriages, and how do you keep the spark? These are questions that we brought together for the event.
What causes love?
What causes love to diminish in marriages, and how do you keep the spark? I would want Dr. Laimo to start this.
Allahu Akbar. Now, okay, so before the conference, a big disclaimer here. I actually told the organizers conversations of this nature, talking unapologetically, and I'm going to say that again, absolutely unapologetically. From a man's point of view, I said forward, please read Three Guys Talking, books 1, 2, and 3. And for those who have read books 1, 2, and 3, so what I'm going to say now, you relate to it. Because I'm going to tell you a scene with Ray, who many ladies hate, because he represents a lot of men, and that's just being practical. So when you read the story of Ray, there's no one guy Ray, there's no person. So since you are talking to the author, I can tell you that there's no one guy Ray, there's no one guy Kamal, and there's no one guy Adam. And similarly with the ladies that are in the novels also, there's no one lady, all those characters. But one thing I can tell you practically, they are all mosaic of truths. Even though the truth may be stretched a little bit, I may put a little coriander powder on it and make it sweeter or make it tougher. But most of what you read in it are fictionalized truths. So I haven't given you that disclaimer. So let's now talk in terms of why you want to always keep the spark. The fact is, we are all human beings and we get tied up with other things and we get busy. And sometimes, like the parable of the grass of my neighbor, if you don't walk on your own grass, it's going to just going to look like weeds. Okay? So we have to attend to it. And I'm going to just share a couple of stuff. Number one, don't set your husband or your wife for failure. That will be number one. If you know your husband is going to forget your anniversary, but he's not going to forget who won the Super Bowl for the last 50 years, and you are wondering how come his brain remembers that one, and his brain doesn't remember that we got married on October 1st, 1960. Okay. You have practically set your husband for failure. There is nothing stopping you from telling him on September 30 that tomorrow is our anniversary. There's nothing stopping you. Just tell him he's going to pretend that he didn't forget. He's going to pretend that he did not forget, and then he will quickly make arrangement for the following day. So if he has not hurt you, you have actually helped him and helped your marriage in that case. The same thing with men too. If you know there's something that, can make things lively for you, there shouldn't be any shame in, I want to see how she will react. No, don't do that. Tell her directly. And one thing that I want to see with women, and I started this in the book, when Desiree was looking at Ray in one style, thinking that he will understand by just looking at her eyes, and he's looking at her eyes and he's looking at, a little lower than the eyes, and he's thinking, man, if I get her at home, and she's like, what's wrong with you? Of course, nothing is wrong with him. He's a guy. So don't assume that without telling him he's going to remember. He's not going to remember. Yeah, because he's not going to remember. That's why. So if you keep asking yourself, why does he not remember? You are going to just set yourself up for failure for your husband. Okay? We have to help our husband not to fail. The same way we have to help our wives not to fail. A lot of time, one of the things we often hear will be when women have children and they said, so they shift all the attention, which is part of the primary problem Ray was addressing. They shift all the attention to the kids and they say to him, he's a grown man, he can take care of himself. And the man is saying, so why am I having this parasite, this pest, this bloodsucker, and this, and leech, thank you. She read the book. I mean, because that's the way he's now seeing his kids. And then they'll say, oh, but these are his own children. So what? He didn't marry you for the children. And let me correct that again. I said it deliberately, and I'm going to correct that. The love the man has for his wife flows to the children. It's the way we are wired. It takes a lot of effort to see the children as being separate from their mothers. Okay? So if you want the love your husband has for you to flow to the children, it's going to flow naturally if you and your husband are close and you have that love between you. It will automatically flow. But in a situation where you and your husband are fighting all the time, he's not going to be seeing the children. He's just going to see them as an extension of their mother. That's the way our brain is wired. So, and that's part of the reason why many things women are able to do, men are not able to do it. Because the women are wired to always think about their children. They are wired to, the man will think about his wife before he think about his children. My dad passed away from me a long time ago, which I didn't understand. Now I understood it, and I wish he's alive so that I can go back and go ask him more questions. Yes, for those of you who have fathers, for Allah's sake, go and sit down and talk to them. Even if your father is the type that will not talk to you when you are much younger, now you are older, he's going to talk to you now. I miss that. Wallahi, I miss that. Because some of the things my dad told me, I was much older before some of them started making sense. And then he's already dead. He died already 20 years ago now, almost 20 years. In October, it will be 20 years he died. So imagine if my dad was alive now. Oh man, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to ask him every question in my head. But the time is gone. So one of the statements of my dad, which I didn't understand back then, is that and I couldn't tell the difference because okay, so for those of you who understand Yoruba, now you are older, you can understand the difference between the two. Okay, that time when he told me that, I didn't understand it. I did not understand the difference. I'm like, so why is it different? Okay, but you know that it's very different. Anyway, because I don't want to take too much time, which I probably took already.
Our
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide and forgive all of us and make our task easy for us. Invest in the marriage. Simple things go a long way. In the novel, I made Ray and Desiree to just travel a few miles to Philadelphia.
Please come Imam Akbar to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Okay.
With the chair?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So we welcome our panelist, Imam Akbar. So while he's getting set for the question was that what causes love to diminish, and how can we keep the spark in the marriage? So I wanted to say that at this point, I would relate a hadith of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So Anas bin Malik reported that a man was with the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and then another man passed by. And then the man that was with the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Oh, Messenger of Allah, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I love this man." And the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Have you told him?" And he said, "No." I said, "Okay, go tell him." So he went after him and told him, "I love you for the sake of Allah." And then the other person replied, "I love you for the sake of he whom you have loved me." So the most important thing that we pick from this hadith is that when you love someone, you have to tell them. There needs to be communication. And for it to happen in a marriage, there has to be space. Because you will be surprised that they don't have visitors, they don't have guests. It's just the husband, the wife, and the children. They don't have any problem, but still their love diminish. Because the children is in between them, you know? Every time the children are there sleeping on their beds. And this is practical. So there has to be space for them to be able to build their own love. They met each other before the children came. So there needs to be space. And then when we go by the verse of the Quran in Surah Rum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already explained to us, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً. So the mawadda signifies the love that is spent between all the love triangle, the emotional triangles. It also encompasses the sexual relationship between them. So do not think that it is like Allah did not touch upon those topics. No, Allah will not leave us without giving us the lights, where to follow, how to go about it. In fact, one of the verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked mainly about sexual relationship and that the scholars usually talk about was one of the verses of Ramadan. So like yes, you're worshiping Allah, but don't forget this, So there has to be space. Sometimes the husband needs to take the wife on an outing. He needs to take her on a date like they were when they were younger. Sometimes she needs a holiday, So things like that they need to do for each other. And so from the things that make their love to diminish is when they disrespect each other, So they need to uphold each other's rights in terms of respect. Some privacy is needed, even though he's your husband, When the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam goes out for maybe like war, expedition and all that, before they get home, they send a rider, like a dispatch rider, to go ahead and tell them that they're on the way already, and so the women will prepare themselves, everybody's ready to receive them, so these things have to happen. We see it. And then they have to practically, the husbands have to stop for a moment, and play with their wives. We see the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam do this. He races with Aisha. We see it, He sits down with her and laugh with her, explain things to her. Not that they will just be taking decisions. I don't want my wife to do this. I don't want my dad to that. I'm the one responsible. And then they will not communicate. Communication needs to happen. On the part of the woman, she needs to know that a man is very, very multiparous. When she gives him one food, she needs to give him variety. And that really keeps the spark in his eyes. He's like, okay, I'm going home. Everything she does for him, she needs to learn to give him, different types, not just one type. That's their nature. That's how they are, So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assist us.
Jazakallah khairan for that question. Hopefully you have taken the position for amen in that regard. If Imam Akbar has anything to contribute to this, because my next question is going to be a complete diversion. Do you have anything to add to what is yours?
Yeah, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. I really like the answer. It was very comprehensive, stressing the importance of having alone time with your wife. As the sister, she mentioned, whenever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would go out on an expedition, he would cast lots between his wives to see who would accompany him. So, this idea of a guy's trip was not real. The only time that his wives would be left behind was for war. If there was war, the wives would stay behind. But if there were any other forms of expedition, any sort of travel that the Prophet would take, he would always carry one of his wives with him, right? So we have to be connected with our spouses. We should be trying to take these journeys and having them accompany with us, because again, that goes back to what she said about having some alone time, right? When they're outside of the city of Medina and they're not within the city and all of the responsibilities, they have that alone time. But also, we also want to know that when it comes to the love, that we, both men and women, are very visual creatures. And so when we look at the Prophet, we find that he was an individual who was always with the siwak, always using the miswak. And we can, use that as a metaphor that he was always constantly aware of his appearance, how he smelled, and how he looked to his wife. He always wanted to make sure that his mouth was clean and that he had the best fragrance coming from him. Not only that, even when two of his wives, Aisha and Hafsa, radiallahu anhuma, they plotted out of their jealousy, saying, whenever the Prophet goes to see Zainab, we know because she offers him honey. So when he comes home, what we're going to say is, your breath smells like mughafir. And that is the name of the flower of the honey, that of that type of honey. And so he would come to his wife Aisha or go to Hafsa, and when he would go to kiss her or embrace her, she would say, your breath, it smells like that honey. The intention behind it was for him to not visit this wife in particular. But we saw the Prophet immediately said, okay, no problem, I won't have the honey anymore. SubhanAllah, seeking to what? To please his wives, to make them satisfied, because he always wants to make sure that his appearance and the way that he smells and the way that he comes to them is attractive. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the verse, O Prophet, why do you make haram what Allah has made halal, seeking to please your wife? It is not permissible to make haram what Allah has made halal. And so the Prophet reneged and went back on it. But again, it shows that mannerisms of always trying to be the best in his form and in his speech and in the way that he presents himself to his wives. Another issue when it comes to intimacy, sometimes is something extremely small. Aisha, radiallahu anha, she said that what I would love about the Prophet when I would eat with him is that wherever I would eat and I would offer him food, he would intentionally bite from the same place I bit, right? So whether she's eating a piece of meat or a piece of bread and she hands it to her husband to eat, he doesn't turn it around and bite the other side. He bites from the same spot where she bit, and she would notice that and pay attention to that. Whenever she would offer him a drink out of a vessel, he would want to place his lips on the same place where his wife had placed her lips. And again, this shows that high level of connection and intimacy between the two spouses. So we have to recognize that there are ways in which we can really create some sort of intimate language between the two spouses. And it has to be based upon love. It has to be some sort of seclusion between the two. Your personal hygiene has to be of the highest caliber. And as well, pay attention, brothers, that your wives, they are even paying attention to where you bite and where you drink. So nothing is hidden. If we focus on these areas, inshallah, it will help to grow the love and the strength.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Jazakallah khairan. Next question is a complete diversion. I'll take this question from the audience, then the next question from someone online. Then we go back to our poll question, then we'll come back to open in the audience. Question is about mental health. The writer says, what advice can you give to our brothers when they have a wife that is going through depression, neglect, mental trauma, and the husband is in denial? An addition to that question is, what can be done or how can things be changed in terms of engaging men in this discussion due to the nature of our culture? Meaning that mental illness is still seen as a taboo. So, anyone ready to take this? Dr. Laima?
Mental health issue is real. just like any other organic problems that we may have. The challenge is people have not yet, fully actualized and gone beyond looking at depression and stuff like that as being something they shouldn't stigmatize. But the conversation is important for us to always have that. But I will also say something too, because the question is focusing on the woman, but a man can also be depressed. A man can also have other mental health issues as well. So it's not something that is sex specific. The issue will be to address whatever is the underlying problem, because sometimes the underlying problem is something that can be addressed. Sometimes it is an expectation problem. Sometimes it is really imbalance of dopamine and all those stuff that the psychiatrist will quote for you. So one thing we should also realize is whenever there's an issue like that, you should always seek professional help. Always seek professional help. And we shouldn't shy away from that, because sometimes that's the reason why people don't want to go, because they don't want anybody to know, they don't want to seek necessary help. We shouldn't do that, because people do commit suicide, and we don't want that. Because once, if a person commits suicide, that's the end, because there's no room to even ask Allah for forgiveness anymore. So anything that we need to do to ensure good mental health, we should do it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us and make our task easy for us. But seek professional help. And one more thing. It's not everything that is due to genes. So, because that's another thing. People will always think they need ruqyah for everything, because they think it's genes that's always bothering them in everything. So don't assume that everything is about the genes. Seek professional help.
Bismillah. I want to say two things on this issue. The first of them is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man kanat al-akhiratu hammahu, ja'ala Allahu ghinahu fi qalbihi, wa jama'a lahu shamlahu, wa atathu ad-dunya wa hiya raghima." He said that whosoever makes the akhirah their priority, if you're working for the hereafter, you're working for the pleasure of Allah, you're working for paradise, Allah will reward you in three ways. The first is ghinahu fi qalbihi. Allah will give you contentment in your heart and satisfaction in your heart. Sometimes what we appear to be stresses or mental illnesses is because of a lack of contentment, a lack of being satisfied with who you are, the way you look, where you live, your children, your husband, and the like. And one of the cures to be content with what you have and who you are is to place your priority in working for Allah's pleasure. Whoever does this, Allah will gift you contentment and peace of mind. As the Prophet, he said in another hadith, لَيْسَ الْغِنَى عَنْ كَثْرَةِ الْأَرَضِ وَلَكِنَّ الْغِنَى غِنَى النَّفْسِ. That contentment is not brought about through the abundance of material things, but it is brought about by being pleased and satisfied with yourself. So one of the ways in which we can seek to ensure our own mental health and overall overcome our anxiety is to try to work harder for paradise, not for the dunya. The second thing the Prophet said that you will get if you prioritize the akhirah is that وَجَمَعَ لَهُ شَمْلَهُ. Allah will gather your affairs together. This is extremely important because as husband and as wives, we have a lot of people pulling on us. Our children need attention. Our spouses need attention. Our community needs attention. The neighbors, the this, the that, our employer, everyone is pulling on us. We do not have the ability to fulfill the rights of everyone around us without the assistance of Allah. And Allah is telling us, if you prioritize me, I will collect your affairs together for you. Allah's divine help will help you to fulfill the rights of everyone. So your parents will be pleased with you. You will find your wives will be satisfied with you. Your husbands will be satisfied with you. The children will be satisfied. Your employer will be satisfied. Why? By just prioritizing the hereafter. And the last thing that the Prophet said you will get is connected to the second point that I wanted to make. Sometimes we think the problem is depression or stress, but truly the problem is, as the doctor he mentioned, it's actually something else. There's an underlying issue. And the Prophet, he said, وَأَتَتْهُ الدُّنْيَا وَهِيَ رَاغِمَةٌ. The dunya will come to you even if it doesn't want to come. Meaning Allah is going to increase your provisions and your wealth. Sometimes the problem is not your family or your kids or where you live. Sometimes it's a money problem. And so it either you're trying to get out of debt or you're trying to increase your wealth. If you make Allah the priority, Allah will increase your wealth and increase your provisions. And with an increase of provisions, we hope that many of the problems that people believe that they have will dissipate and will go away. And you will have some sort of peace of mind and heart when it comes to one's mental health, both male and female.
Brother Rufai, we are going to allow the online question come up now.
We already addressed it.
Okay, it's already addressed, alhamdulillah. Okay, yeah, we will take the one that you gave me, and I to the questionnaire, I have a lot of these from the polled question, and we are getting to it, inshallah. No one is forgotten.
Inshallah, we have a lot of questions regarding abuse in marriages. So I would like to just read out maybe about 3, and then our panelists can deal with them, but they are all related to the same thing. 1, my husband beats me and begs every time he does it. He curses me, my family, and the rest. I know he is narcissist, but I don't want to leave because of my children. I believe my children will not turn that well if I do. Please advise. What can you tell us about Islamically upright and well-learned individual males specifically that understand the teaching of the Deen and are found raising their hands to beat up their spouses or torture them emotionally when they make mistakes that they find inexcusable? What do you do when you feel like you are emotionally abused, not physical? You, the wife, are the only one supporting the family financially. It tells you he is looking for a job, but you don't see the sign, and no intimacy whatsoever. Please, we have talked about marriage counseling, but he will not make any move about it. We have 3 kids and don't want to divorce. I have been patient for more than 7 years. How do married women navigate trying to obey their spouses, husbands, as good wives when they disagree? Do men have the final say in making decisions in the home? Please, I have a sister married for years. Husband came to United States later after 11 years. He came back to Nigeria and brought the kids to United States. And then he pretended to be processing the papers for their mom, but the children knew it was a lie because when they came into the United States, they found him living with another woman. And later one of the children filed for the mom. So she's now living in the United States. So he at times go to the apartments of the woman, but now he stops going to her. That's a question. So what advice do you have for the woman? Okay, I think at this point we can stop at the abuse. No. Assalamu alaikum. I mentioned those because they seem to come together. They are related. Okay. So, and I also want them. Assalamu alaikum. I also want you all to feel like we did not ignore your questions.
Okay.
That's why we are reading them. You know, so everybody is passionate about what they sent forward. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So, a few points. Point number 1 is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that any difficulty or hardship that we face in our life is often brought about by our own hands. And when we think about these things, we have to ask ourselves, what have we not done, but what have we not done to help to mitigate the situation? A husband who gets into a relationship with a woman, if he is an abuser to that level, often signs are seen almost immediately. And so the question that I have to ask is, what did you do the first time he raised his hands to you? Who did you go to the first time that he was abusive with you, did you go to his family? Did you go to his father? Did you threaten to leave before you became pregnant? Before there were 3 children? Did you do any of these things? We are not Christians and we are not Catholics. Divorce is permitted in Islam. And of course, we have social pressures and family pressures that when people get married out of pressure, they're expected to stay. But we see from the time of the companions that divorce was implemented amongst them, that they understood that even though they were companions, radiyallahu anhum, the best from among the human beings, even some of their marriages did not work. And one of the things that they did that we are lacking is they were able to use divorce to separate when they saw that perhaps they bit off more than they can chew, or they were in a situation that wasn't good for them. A man came to the Prophet ﷺ and was complaining about his wife and complaining and complaining and complaining. And the Prophet said to him, divorce her. To which he said, but I love her. The Prophet said, then stay, right? So we see the Prophet is saying, hey, divorce is a tool that could be used. Now for a sister who already find herself in this situation, 3 children in, and now it's been 15 years, this advice is not really going to help them. But I wanted to start with that for those sisters who are looking into getting married, or those sisters who are newly married. When your spouse begins to show these signs early, you have to do something about it. By being just patient and being quiet, all you are doing is empowering them to dominate you more and more and more. Number 2, for the sisters that already find themselves in this situation, again, it's a very difficult thing because you do have the power of divorce, but now things are complicated because children are in the picture. Oftentimes, what you say and what you do is not going to be heard and is not going to be changed. And you can play all the verses of the Quran to your husband, but you have allowed him to get away with this behavior, and so he's not going to change his ways. So there are 2 things, 2 courses of action. Number 1, you should never fail in making dua for your spouse and praying for your spouse. And I would like to say that sometimes we have to make the power of dua vocal in the presence of our spouses. The Prophet ﷺ, he would make dua for his children, his grandchildren, his daughters, his wives in their presence. He once grabbed his cousin Al-Abbas and hugged him and said, Allahumma alimhu al-kitab wa faqihu fi din. Oh Allah, give him knowledge of the book and teach him the fiqh, teach him understanding. The Prophet saw his grandchildren playing in front of him, picked up Al-Hasan and said, this is a Sayyid, a master, and he will bring about peace between 2 groups of Muslims. Again, vocalizing his prayer. I believe that a sister who has a husband who is abusive, if she were to get in the car with him and she were to say, oh Allah, I ask of you, make my husband's hands more gentle. Please do not let him put his hands upon me because we have daughters and I do not want our daughter to be facing what I am facing. Just between you and him, not in front of his family, not in front of the children, not to embarrass or provoke him, but just between you and him. And this is not something you do every day where he becomes numb to it, but at key moments, and you don't harpen on it, that will make him feel bad and feel guilty about what he's doing. And that will cause him to hesitate more. So make the power of dua. Not only is he seeing you pray for him, but you are kind of calling out that action and you're intertwining it with the people that he care about. And number 2 as well, for those who find themselves in this situation and they decide to be patient because they can leave, anyone can leave, but they decide to be patient, they should understand that yes, there is a greater good that could be brought about when we keep the family unit together. And when it comes to our spouses and our husbands, as I mentioned yesterday, do not negate the power of Iman. The more religious the household becomes as a family, the more responsible your husband will feel with these verses that promotes the importance of kindness and generosity and love in the marriage. Attend the conferences, attend the seminars, attend the lectures, promote family night, promote Islam trivia night. Try to increase Islamic discourse and discussion and practice in the homes, and hopefully that will create a level of taqwa and piety in him, which will shift him from bad behavior to better behavior.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a very, very complicated situation. And for a lot of people, when it comes to abuse, there's no one way to find a solution to it. because there's so many dimensions that comes to abuse, especially when it's emotional, because you can't really feel it, you can't touch it. What I would say to us as sisters is we have to be sisters to each other. If somebody calls you and say, my sister, I'm going through this, what are you as a sister doing to help? If it's your daughter or your mom or your sister, because whatever we do also makes the person make the decisions they make. So if you got a call from a sister that said, my husband just beat me, and you said, just come and take shelter, the sister feels empowered. But when we tell the sister and say, stay there and be patient, let us not be the one that's going to pick up our sister's cups, because it has happened to us in our community in Houston. So for you and for myself, our role is we have to be sisters to each other. For our brothers, our husbands, we have to be brothers to each other, because when our brothers have the support, they can come to you and say, I need help. This is what's going on. I don't know how to solve it. And our role as a community is to say, you know what, brother? Maybe there's something we can do to help. The reason why these things gets to 20 years and people don't know is because people don't feel supported. They don't feel like they can come to you and tell you that this is what they're going through, because they're scared of our response. They're scared to say, you know what, it's okay. But the truth is, those kids are even going to suffer more, because now they're going to have to find healing from the situation that their parents are from. We should not leave our kids in the situation of abuse in the excuse that we're saving our kids, because indirectly we're not saving our kids. We're hurting our kids more. We have to be able to tell our kids that in a situation when you're being hurt, you can leave. Because when you don't leave, you're indirectly telling your kids that it's okay to be in a situation until you die. And that is not a right lesson for our kids. So we have to be able to say, you know what, this is hard, but my daughter, my son, this is what I'm going through. And it doesn't have to be divorce. It could be separation until we find help. And let your kids know that we're trying to find help and we're trying to work things, because it's an illness too. And if you had a pain, you would keep seeking help for that pain. If this doctor said, I can't help you, go to you find the next specialist and the next specialist. So this is also like your own illness that we keep working on, but you can leave that situation to find a solution and come back. You don't have to be there. And may Allah make it easy for all of us.
Okay, so I know we've spent a lot of time on this question. I know we've spent a lot of time on this question, but I want to add one more dimension to it. Okay, so during the time of the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, one of the Sahabas reported that the Rasul said, I think it was Abdullah ibn Zam'a, he said that, how is it possible that you beat your wife and then you embrace her, you know? And this hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. So which shows that it is not part of Islam, right? It is something that is abhorred. It's not something that men should do, right? So, and then there's this principle that we shouldn't lie. But when it comes to the matter of marriage, and someone comes to you for advice, and you know that the man is a woman beater, you have to tell them, this man, he beats women, or he beats sisters, or whatever. And so that you will make sure that your daughter does not marry that kind of person. Because it's possible that a person who beats his wife would get divorced from one woman, and then he will marry another one and start beating her. People have to know that he beats his wife so that he can stop, and so that another woman will not enter into that same trap.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. When I was researching the book, The Three Guys Talking, and I keep taking you back to it because a lot of, like I said, a lot of stories in that are not necessarily fiction. They were fictionalized. There are stories of women who also beat their husbands. because they are here in the United States.
This
Yeah.
is true.
There are
This
many
is true.
women. There are many women that also know.
Let's
With the
keep
palm-
it down. Let's keep it down. There are lots of questions to answer.
Assalamu alaikum.
There's a lot of things we can
Let's
get.
keep it down, please.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
There are some women that are actually physically strong. I was in the US Army, and I can tell you some of the ladies we train together in basic training, some of these ladies are very fit. So we are not even talking in terms of strength, in terms of physical fitness now. But to a man, sometimes your words is much worse than him being stabbed in his heart. And so you have many men who are also emotionally abused by their wives. All those statements of àwọn ẹgbẹ́ nǹkan báyìí náà ṣe, àwọn ọmọ inú ẹ nǹkan báyìí ni wọ́n ń ṣe. These are emotional abuse too. So in the book, for those of you who have read the novel, there's an organization in the book called Organization for Oppressed Husbands. Oh, if you know what hoe would be to a guy, it is when you are being kicked in the you-know-where. And I searched for shelters for men, and there's none. So when a man is abused, not only does he feel the shame, how will I tell people that my wife used to slap me? Or my wife will do this to me? And if you call the cops, they will look at you like, you can't tell your family. You can't, what will you do? Okay, so sometimes they don't even believe you. They don't believe you. No, but the men will not want to do that. But we have to understand this abuse is both ways. Men often don't seek help. And so my contribution right now is to our brothers. The same way our sisters have encouraged themselves, understand that if your wife is abusing you, you can call 911 too. Yes, you can. You can call 911. Yes, you will feel emasculated, but at least the situation will stop. This is really important because before I left Nigeria, I already know the case of Loretta Bobbitt. Is there anybody here who doesn't know Loretta Bobbitt? By a show of hands, anybody here who never heard of the name Loretta Bobbitt? Okay, you know her, right? Or you don't know her? This was a woman who said she was always abused by the husband, and she caught his penis and threw it away. Yeah, so I knew about that case before I even came to the United States. So think about it. There can be so many things that can happen in a family. Abuse can go both ways. It's more that men are always abusing women. But men don't also have the support too. There are no shelters for abused men. So that when the cops come, the man is the one they will tell to leave. And women often play on that. There was a case, I'm going to relate this case without telling you any details. This lady called us. We didn't call her, mind you. We didn't call her. She called us to tell us the husband is not at home. That they told her that he's with another woman somewhere. And we say, this is unusual for this brother. What exactly happened? We have to track the brother. We finally found him. And he said, didn't she tell you what she did? We said, no, what did she do? This woman went to the county court to put restraining order on her husband. And then she started looking for him. And then we were like, don't you know what it means? So the guy was saying the reason why I couldn't come home is because she put a restraining order on him. And then we asked the lady, don't you know what restraining order means? So sometimes people give some horrible advice. So this lady never thought through what it means to go to the cops and put a restraining order, because they say, if you do this, you do this, you do this, you get the house, you get the alimony, you get the child support, you get all of this. So she went to the court to put all these things on the husband, and then she's wondering why the husband is not coming home. So there are some things we also have to understand. This is a big problem for all of us. Nobody deserves to be abused.
Okay. Dr. Imam Akbar, are you going to say anything about this? Okay, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The organizers are very passionate about what we take out of this. They have decided to extend this program. We go for Salatul Sur. We will return here to continue these questions. Then after then, we'll hit our lunch, inshallah. So this will allow us to cover so many more, inshallah. So before we completely divert on this question, I want to ask if Imam Akbar can say something, because as Muslims, we know that every action is ibadah, including our marriages, right? So if you as a wife or as a husband know that you have issues, meaning anger issue, most of us, we don't know there are issues. We don't know their illness until when some of us get to the United States. Raising our hand to beat anyone, yelling on top of your voice, causing, we don't see. It's just an energy to react to a situation, but they are abnormal. We found out that they are abnormal. If you know you have this issue and you know your marriage is an ibadah, you want it to be accepted. And Allah say, Takullah. Fear Allah. Fear. Even if your wife or your husband don't report you, can you admit that you have a problem and seek for help? Imam Akbar, you want to say something about this?
Bismillah. In every answer, I try to be as practical as possible. And that is because even though there are verses in the Quran that tells us how we should treat each other, even though there are ahadith which tell us how we should be treating each other, if there is a lack of faith and conviction, there will be a lack of action, a lack of call to action. As well, there are situations where men are going to be more embarrassed and more intimidated. I've found many sisters being open and being ready to go to counseling, and brothers are not open and willing and ready to go to counseling. And no one can make them go. No verse, no hadith, no phone call is going to be able to make them go. At the end of the day, Allah also tells us in the Quran, لا يغيروا ما بأنفسكم حتى يغيروا. Allah will not change the condition of yourselves until you change the condition of yourself. Yeah, حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسكم. So again, Allah will not change our condition until we first make the steps to change ourselves. And so the question must be, where is our spirituality? Where do we want to go after we have passed away? Because this life is temporary. And what is our relationship with Allah? What is our relationship with the book of Allah, with the Quran? You have to want to be a better Muslim so that you can be a better human being. No miracle is going to take place where you went to sleep a tyrant and you wake up merciful and just. There has to be that change. So what are the ways in which you are trying to spark that change in your family, in your household, and between your spouses? Yes, beating one's wife or having anger issues is very wrong and very terrible. The Prophet ﷺ warns against it, speaks out against this, gives us many advice on how to overcome our anger issues, but we must first want to overcome it. And so I think that one of the ways in which we can help as a community, being practical, is that we do need to have more lectures that are based upon building character, adab, akhlaq, and mannerisms. We need to make sure that whether it is bi-monthly or quarterly, that, you know, we have our imams or we bring in individuals who can make sermons that will, you know, arouse these types of spirit and these types of conversations. Because if they don't hear it in the masjid, then they're not going to want to change in and of themselves. And you never know, you may be telling someone something, but sometimes they just need to hear it from someone else to really spark that change. So I feel that if we're making more lectures and more programs relating to the issue and we take it out of the closet, then it'll be easier for people to really change themselves and to better themselves and their families. But if we're not addressing these issues and we're not addressing them on the pulpit, Oftentimes, I have heard people come to me and say, your khutbah on domestic violence was very nice, but brother, why don't you stick to tawbah, salah, and children respecting the parents? Your khutbah on on peer pressure is very good. Your khutbah on suicide is very nice, but brother, please stick to tawbah, salah, and respecting the parents. Every khutbah cannot be about tawbah, salah, and respecting the parents. We have to have our imams and our da'is and our speakers make khutbahs that are addressing issues in the community. And if we want to learn about the tawbah or the salah or respecting the parents, then that can be done in a dars, in lectures and programs. But when we have the maximum amount of people coming to the masjid, we should be taking that point to address the issues and not feel that we are airing dirty laundry, but rather we are cleaning clothing.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar. Inshallah tabarak.
Inshallah, before we move forward to the next question, the topic of abuse is something I'm very passionate about. I've been opportune to volunteer in so many respects with so many organizations on this. And I will tell you for a fact what I learned. Number one, if someone is physically abusive, mediation does not work. It's a mental health issue. If someone is raising their hands onto their wives or a woman to their husband, because we've seen that issue among even Muslims. We saw a Muslim sister that was the one hitting her husband, and we never knew. She was the one that brought her issue to the group I was volunteering for, but later we found out that she was actually the abuser. And we also have to remember that being a good person or a bad person, I think being male or female does not make you bad or good. If you're a good person, you're a good person. If you're a bad person, you're a bad person. But yes, as in Islam, for a Muslim household, the men have the power in time, because Allah has make them maintainer for us, and they know that the wife's paradise is under their feet. So some men can use some of this Islamic injunction to abuse their wives. Yeah, we know that. But you have to know that the fundamental issues is about power, control. And it's important that we seek help, and that we should also learn to get empowered as women and as men too, because we have so many situations where the women might not actually be a husband beater particularly, but it might be someone that shouts a lot and is always threatening with divorce, in situation where even at times it might be the situation of papers against each other. No, so many things. So it's about power play. We need to know that, and we need to seek help. Now, what our brothers have said that's very important, is that we need to be open to seeking therapy. Let's see therapy as going to the dentist to clean your teeth, or to your medical, your PCP for your physical yearly. It's not, we should destigmatize it. It's not a big deal. I mean, I believe that every family should at one time or the other need to go for therapy, maybe for their kids or for themselves at different times in their life, even because of the stress of work. So let's be open. We're in America, and there's a lot of stress in this country that we don't go through in where we are coming from. So let's be open to the environment that we live in. The stress we are all going through here is different. And the power play, we women, we know the power that we have here. That if I call 911, hey, even though my husband is the one paying for the house, he's probably the one to leave the house for me. Those are the kind of things that women to use against their husbands. So we are not trying to come here and say, oh, only the men are the abuser, or the men or the women are the abusers. Let's come as a community. We are here as a community to reach a point of harmony, and to come together and see what we can do better to move our community forward. May Allah make it easy for us. Assalamu alaikum. So we're going to the next question.
Our next question is a diversion completely. Okay, the question goes. One of the issue causing problem in marriages relates to sexual intimacy. Okay, the writer says one of the major issues causing problem is sexual intimacy. Our wives mostly prefer old school method of man on top and don't like to experiment other methods. This is very frustrating to our men who gets bored using the same style. This causes frustration and resentments. Resentment within them, to the point some even tempted to experiment those methods else, find somewhere else or get another wife. Okay, so when you are responding to this question, please take a note where the question is taking us. Salaam alaikum. Salaam alaikum. Oh.
There was something about it, but they're related to each other.
So, Assalamu alaikum. We see that we have very many questions coming in. And for the benefit of covering as much as possible, based off the poll that we got from the community, we would go back to the question that we collated from the So inshallah, we will group the questions together. Please, any underage children should leave. Okay, we have a program for them in the children's sessions. Okay. Now we want to take one of the poll questions that's related to the question that we read just now. Issues of sexual satisfaction for the woman, pornography on the part of men, domestic violence / abuse on either spouse, physical and emotional, managing multiple wives with the fear of Allah. Okay, what can one do to a husband who is addicted to watching pornography? What do you advise women whose husband cannot sexually satisfy her to orgasm? What are our options? What can one do to a husband? Okay, what can I refuse my husband's request for sex politely if I work full time and provide for the family and come home always tired? My husband doesn't work nor help in the house.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
So we are intentionally asking the questions from the poll so that some of your questions that might be related to this, if we did not address it individually, please know that it should be addressed among this because we have a lot of questions coming in. Okay, now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Nobody wants to answer this question. So I think I took a note from what Dr. Laima said, and Dr. Laima told us that men do like variety. And I think for women also, and for all of us as spouses, we need to keep talking about stuff like this. When you first get married, a lot of times you might not even know the expectation of what to expect in the sexual relationship between you and your spouse. There's possibility that you don't know. And the goal is also to learn. And there's so many ways that you can learn. There's so many classes you can take. There's so many Islamic classes you can take now to be able to increase your knowledge and understand the perspective of the role of spouses in Islam and how to also satisfy ourselves when it comes to, coital behavior between a woman and a husband. One of those classes I took was Love Notes from our Maghrib. A lot of these classes are also online, so you can take them in the comfort of your home. You and your spouse can take some of these classes. You can meet with marriage counselors. You can meet with relationship counselors to help you understand the expectation. And also, we keep talking about it. Talk to your doctor, because sometimes it might even be a medical issue. And if you're not addressing the problem and you're making an assumption, you're actually not helping. Sometimes, especially for men, it's not something they feel comfortable talking to even their doctors about it. I'm a nurse, and I've had women be the ones, some wives to be the ones to come and say, hey, my husband is having this problem. He's not going to talk to you about it. But when he comes, mention it and ask him about it. So also as a wife, if you feel like there's a problem and you're not sure, seek medical advice, find out if there's something else that might be going on, and keep searching, and may Allah make it easy for us.
Yes, Patike. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As a disclaimer again, sorry, there were lots of questions on sex and sex-related issues that were sent forth by the members of the community way ahead. So please don't be upset with our moderators. They're actually doing a great job trying to pick questions to ask. That's why I said, read all the questions that relate to sex. Read all of them, because there are so many of them. So if you've sent a question up and you don't seem that they use the same words that you used, just know we are trying to package all of them together as an entity. If your specific question is not addressed, please, for Allah's sake, we need another forum for that can be dedicated to that. I'm going to start from where our sister stopped, which is in terms of education itself. By a show of hands, how many of you got the sex talk from your parents? By a show of hands, how many of us gave the sex talk to our children? Okay, so you can, if you look around, you see where the failure started, right? No, let's be practical. When you look around, you see where the failure started. We were not taught by our parents, and we are also not teaching our children. How do you then expect anybody to know? So, and then we'll complain that they are learning this thing in the street, or somebody is telling them. Okay, so we have to look inwards first. What is our responsibility as we are teaching our children how to perform salat? We should be teaching them also how to be responsible husbands and wives. I'll tell you this, you know, there's something they call performance improvement, right? From attending nikahs, multiple, and you get there and basic knowledge is lacking. Well, it got to a point that I said to myself, I will not be on the podium in a marriage that I'm one of the officials without having conversation between the couples. Because one of them that actually blew my mind, we were there to do the nikah. We were there physically in the masjid. And something just occurred to me, and I called the guy and I said, so what do you say when you want to meet your wife? And he has no idea. And then I said, after you have a relationship with your wife, what do you do? And he had no idea. Wallahi, I felt so embarrassed. I mean, we're in the masjid to do that nikah. We have to put this guy to the side to teach him janaba and to teach him alama janibna mina shaitan. Come on now. This is horrible. There's no other way to describe it. This is terrible. How can you be in the nikah? The nikah itself, we are already there at the nikah. This is not a counseling session. This is not introduction. This is the nikah. The guy has no idea what janaba is. He has no idea what you say before you sleep with your wife. and we are there to do the nikah. So our bigger problem is not what's happening in the bedroom, is what did not happen before we even get into the bedroom. If you are still feeling shy to be the one to tell your son, this is how you take care of a woman, and you are still shy to tell your daughter, this is how, you know, where babies come from, we have big problems. One of the practical things, because people often ask, okay, how do we break the ice on this issue? And I have a very simple solution. Very simple. Ask your child, your son or your daughter, where do babies come from? It's a simple question. If they give you the right answer, you are late. It's simple. Ask your son, even if it is 2 years old, ask him. If he's 5 years old, ask him. If he's 8 years old, ask him. If he's 10, it's a simple question. If he doesn't know the answer, then you know this is the one that you still have to be the one to teach. But by the time you ask your son and you say, oh, where do babies come from? And they say, oh, when a man and a woman, when they have sex, then you know you are late. And you don't know how quickly they teach them in school. They teach them very early. And now they are even teaching them a man can marry a man, a woman can marry a woman. So when exactly are we going to start? So instead of addressing the issue of my husband is not, let's address this one first. Because as our own, we're already in it. The next generation, we have to help them. And they even have more challenges than we do. When we are all growing up, you hear about pornography, you want to see it, but you don't have it, right? Now we give them on their phone ourselves. Aren't we the one giving our children the Droid phones, the Apple phone, the everything? So that with it, they have open access to anything they want to watch. So, and then we are complaining. Okay, so we have to be practical when it comes to this issue. When you get home, it's not too late. You may be talking to your teenager and they are rolling their eyeballs, they are doing all that. Don't be discouraged, because it's not how they are behaving while you are there that matters. It's what they do when you are not there. So be the one to tell your children about sex. Tell them the difference between a man and a woman. They know it already. You are just reinforcing it. And that's why a good question, that question of where do babies come from, is very good. If they tell you the babies come from Costco, you know you have some room. Okay? So, or Sam's Club, if that's the one you have here. But if they give you the correct answer, you are late. It doesn't matter how old they are, because people mature at different levels and they are exposed at different intervals. So not one size fits all this. Now, to answer some of the questions, because there are so many of them, I'm only going to touch on the principles. When your wife wants it, it is your responsibility. When your husband wants it, it is his right. The same thing for the women. When your husband wants it, it is his right. Okay? And then it is your own responsibility. Now, the lady that I mentioned in terms of I'm the breadwinner. Honestly, there was a question that somebody said that I'm the breadwinner in the house. Coming from the lady, I'm saying to myself, this lady's husband is already dying of depression. There are some things you don't need to say. Okay, there are some things you don't need to say, because your husband is already feeling as a failure. By the time you now have the word in my head, I don't want to use it, but use another word for me. Thank you. You're already coming out to say, I am the breadwinner in the house. What do you think your husband is feeling? And then you think he's not able to perform. You already killed it now. What performance, Idoku? You already killed his performance. So we have to understand when it comes to the issue of emotion, men are also emotional too. Men are very emotional. They may not say it, they may not talk to you, but they are talking to their friends. And that's actually the basis of Three Guys Talking. So the Three Guys Talking is actually a synopsis through the minds of guys. And that's why it is written unapologetically from a man's point of view. Because often people will ask me, how come the opinion of women is not represented? The book is not set to address the opinion of women. It is written to address the issues of how men see issues, right or wrong. And that's why sometimes, for those who read book 1, you will see that there's an interjection there. that I actually brought in the opinion of women, in which one woman was telling them, look, maybe you should reach out to your wife. She's not necessarily trying to be difficult. Maybe you have just not reached that enough. And he said, well, I bought her flowers, I bought chocolates, I did this, I did that. What more can I do, right? So you never know. You just never know. I'm going to address one issue and then I'll give the microphone, I'll leave it alone. If you have somebody mentioned the husband is not doing a good job, or the husband that is not even able, that's a 1 minute wonder. Now, yeah, there are some men like that. If you are not satisfied, understand that your husband may not know that you are not. Because as far as a man is concerned, when he is happy, the rest of the world is happy. That's the way men are wired. A man, and you see, a man may be a 1 minute wonder, and 59 seconds, 60 seconds is already, he's gone. And the wife is just looking at him that, what, this is Jonaba for nothing, right? But the man doesn't know because he's already sleeping, right? So if he's not told, he's not aware, you don't go to see the expert, he's never going to know. So if you have not brought this issue to light with him, then understand this is not a problem, he probably will know. But to the men, understand that doing foreplay is part of the sunnah. And if you're a 1 minute wonder, you can spend the first 30 minutes playing with her. And then you can then be your 1 minute wonder. That will all count as 31 minutes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We are going to break for Salatul Soul. Huh? No, we have to go for Salat. Inshallah, this is a very hot topic, and without this, there's no marriage. Got it right. So some of our panelists is still going to contribute to this, but now we got to break for Salat. We'll meet back at 2:15, inshallah.
Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun.
Sisters, please go and use your restroom in the masjid. Brothers, our restroom is being reconstructed. Please use the restroom here in the hall. Brothers, use the restroom in the hall. Sisters, please go and use your restroom in the masjid. Jazakumullah khairan. And then we come back for the food.
Assalamu alaikum. We have our vendors outside. Please shop with them. Please buy stuff from our vendors. They pay to display their goods.